All right, so thank you everybody for joining on this beautiful day. I'm Shane. I am the one of the co-hosts of the Divi Seattle Meetup. Braden will be joining us later today. I recognize everybody on here, so we can skip the introductions. Great to see familiar faces. So today we're going to be going over a topic that is a little bit outside of the scope of what we normally talk about. Normally we're just very Divi focused. This is going to be a little bit more about analytics, conversion, reporting, and how to integrate that with Divi. But a lot of these topics can be applied to any website. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right, and I'll show everybody the quick overview for this meetup. So we're going to start by talking about basic analytics tracking. So that when it comes to analytics, we all have different needs. Sometimes we want something super basic. Sometimes we want something more in-depth and customizable. We're going to start with the basics. That's just analytics. Second, we're going to talk about conversion tracking. So that's tracking things we actually care about. That could be phone calls, form submits, button clicks, whatever actions we want people to take on our websites, tracking that and attributing it to different pages or referral channels, that kind of stuff. Third, we're going to talk about reporting. So we have all this data, great. Now let's make it insightful. And that involves reporting on it and putting it into a format that's easy to look at, interpret, and kind of putting some automation in there. All right, so today we're going to talk about all Google products. So Google Analytics, 1, Google Search Console, 2, Google Tag Manager, 3, and Google Data Studio, 4. So diving into the Google family. All right, so for the purposes of this demo, I am using an old website that I made for a pizza place. Super basic. So this is Chesco's Pizza in Freedom, New Jersey. They have a pretty basic website. People come on here for, usually just a few purposes to see the menu, and then they'll call an order. Sometimes they'll want to do online ordering. They'll click here. It takes you to a third-party domain up here to place your order. And then I'll jump over here on mobile. Some people might want to place an order. So those are the 3 basic actions that we kind of care about for this website. So starting at the top, basic analytics tracking. How can we integrate Google Analytics on this website? This is a Divi website. It was built a long time ago, has not been upgraded to the latest Divi. But none of that changes. We still go into theme options. We go into integration. And right here is where you can add code to the head or the body of your website. So this is the place to go if you ever want to add any code to the head or the body of every page on your Divi website. So the first thing we're going to do is install Google Analytics. I'm going to jump over here to Google Analytics. I already have a Google Analytics account created. If you don't have one created, you'll go to Google Analytics and create one. When you go to create one, it will ask you if you want to create a Google Analytics 4 account, which is the new, latest and greatest thing, or a traditional Google Universal Analytics account. Personally, I am not using Google Analytics 4. I'm using the old school one. So this demo is going to be using that. All right, so we have our Google Analytics account created at this point. For this demo, I'm using a site that had some data, so this can actually be interesting. What we're going to do now that we're viewing the account is come over here to admin. We're going to go to tracking info, tracking code. We're going to take this code right here, copy, and paste it into, you could paste it into the head or the body. Really It's not a huge difference which one you do. I have it in the body here. We'll just put it in one of these places. I'm going to click Save. We got our green check mark. And I can view the website. How do we know that it's working? Two ways. One, you can install a Chrome plugin called Google Tag Assistant. You can install that. You click Enable. You refresh. Not what I meant to do. Refresh the page. And right here, it will tell you, hey, Google Analytics is installed. And here is the ID for your property. Won't let me zoom in there, but this is the ID for your property. They're very useful if you're inheriting a website that might have other people's Google Analytics accounts and you're trying to figure out, are there 3 on here? Which is the right one? That tool is great for that. Another way to figure it out is you can go over to Google Analytics while having the website open. So 2 tabs. We're going to go over here to Real-Time Overview. This is going to show you a real-time report of how many people are on the website and just some basic information. So here it can show there's 1 person on the website in Seattle, Washington. This website is based in New Jersey, so this is 100% me. We know it's working, right? So that is, if you want to install Google Analytics and get your basic tracking, that is what you do. There's not really many settings you need to configure in Google Analytics. It all works out of the box with Divi. The one thing I might recommend is just going to your property settings and making sure that this default URL exactly matches your domain. So if you use www, make sure that is set here. If you're not on HTTPS, you should be. Just make sure that's set here. Just make sure that matches. You'll get some weird things happening if it doesn't. So before moving on to Google Search Console, does anybody have any questions about basic implementation of GA?
What's the Chrome extension, Shane, that you mentioned?
So this is called Google Tag Assistant.
Okay, thanks.
It looks like they renamed it to Legacy recently, but I don't know, it works great. All right, looks like no questions there. So now we've completed step 1. We got our basic Google Analytics installed. We can collect data. Great. Second, we want to integrate the website with Google Search Console, and this is an SEO thing. So Google Search Console, for those of you that don't know, is your window into how Google understands your website, what pages are indexed. If there's problems, they'll tell you there. They'll also tell you performance, what people searched for to find your website, what pages they clicked on, all that good stuff. So here I am in Google Search Console. You can type it in, or you can go to search.google.com. When you do that, you will be prompted to add a website. There's 2 ways you can do this here. One is a URL prefix. 2 is a domain. For most small businesses, small websites, URL prefix is all you need. All right, this is where you'll just take the exact website name, copy and paste right into here. The thing is, this is very case sensitive. So if your website is HTTPS, you need to make sure that you type that in right. If you're www, you have to make sure you type that in right. This has to match the way that your website is. You'll click continue there. And just for this purpose, I'm going to type in a different one. It's going to try to verify it. Okay, so if you have Google Analytics set up on your website, it will auto-verify. That's all you need to do. I'm going to try one more time with a random one. Test dot. This is what you'll normally get if you don't have Google Analytics set up already. It'll say these are the different ways to verify. Easiest way with Divi is you click HTML tag, you copy this, and you paste it in theme options right up here. You can see I already did this previously. So that's what you need to do to get up and running with Google Search Console and get verified. Now, before I talked about the other way to do it, which is domain property. So this is very useful for if your website has several subdomains. So let's pretend you have store dot, blog dot, support dot. You have different subdomains and you want one place to see everything. Then you would do domain. So for the purposes of this, we'll go through it. What is this? Just goes pizza.com. The only way to verify that you own all of the subdomains is to add a DNS record. All right. We should all be somewhat familiar with DNS records. The move here is you go to your DNS provider. A lot of times that's your domain registrar, but not always. For this website, I have them on Cloudflare. So I'm going to jump in here. I'll go to the website. I'll go over here to DNS. And here we have a listing of all of the website's DNS records. These are the records for where does the mailbox live? Where does the website live? You know, if you use MailChimp, you should have a record for that, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to click Add Record. We want to add a text record. Text records are pretty harmless. Here we're going to do @ and here we're going to paste in that code and hit save. Depending on your DNS provider, it could take a few hours to work. We click verify. Cloudflare is like pretty fast, so instantly verified, and now we're in. Okay, so if your website has been live on Google for a while, when you verify this, if you haven't done so already, you're going to get some data here. You'll see performance, coverage, a whole bunch of stuff. If your website hasn't been live on Google for a while, it'll say pending. And then you will only actually see data from the day that you verified it. So that aside, without diving super deep into this, the next step you're going to want to do is submit your sitemap to Google Search Console. So to do that, we go over here to Sitemaps. And here we enter the sitemap URL. The sitemap is not created automatically by Divi. That's created by an SEO plugin. Personally, I use Yoast. There's also the SEO framework. There's a whole bunch of them you could use. You know, whatever SEO plugin you use will give you a sitemap. Yoast is going to always be /sitemap_index.xml. The way this works, it's a listing of all your pages, but the way Yoast does it is it actually has a separate sitemap for each custom post type. So for this website, I'm using like a plugin that creates like a dynamic menu, and each meal is its own page. So that's why we see a few weird ones here. But by default, Divi will have pages, projects, posts. If you have a blog, post tags and post categories. And then you can click on any one of those, and it will show you the pages on the website. So all we have to do here is we take this URL, sitemapindex.xml. We come over here, hit paste and submit. Now I've already done this, so it shows up down here. It'll say success. It'll tell you how many URLs are in that. And what this does is it tells Google, hey, Google, these are the pages we care about. These are the ones we want you to show on our website. So those are the two basic things you want to do for just about every website you publish. You want to install Google Analytics, and you want to verify Google Search Console. You want to submit the sitemap. The last step is kind of a minor one, but you connect Google Analytics with Google Search Console. To do that, we go back to Google Analytics. I click on the admin in the bottom left. In the center here, I click on all products. It's kind of buried. Google Search Console, adjust link. Well, it'll say add link. You'll click add. It'll go over to your listing of Google Search Console properties, and then you can just click Save. That menu is not going to show for me because it's already done, but pretty minor thing. That will allow some Google Search Console data to show up in your Google Analytics. All right, so moving back over to our high-level overview, we've just done all of these things. Basic analytics tracking is set up. Does anybody have any questions about that? Eugene? It seems like your microphone might not be working. There, we hear you. Did you have a question, Eugene? Okay, if you have a question, just toss it in the chat. So next up, we're going to move on to conversion tracking. So as I alluded to earlier, conversion tracking means tracking conversions or things that we actually care about. So there's a few different ways to do this. I'm going to show you the way that I use, and it's through another tool called Google Tag Manager. So I do not have that set up already on this website. So we're going to get started and set that up. So tagmanager.google.com, we're using the free platform. We're going to go to, it's going to look a little bit different for me because I already have accounts. Got to find the new account page. Where is that? Here we go. Create account. All right, so we're going to create an account. What this does is it allows you to install a block of code once in Divi. And then anytime you want to add code to your website, it could be for tracking purposes, it could be a live chat, it could be anything. That code then just gets added in Tag Manager. So it's kind of like an interface for marketing people to add code without having to have access to the website and without breaking the website. So I recommend keeping all of your code and integrations in here. So I'm going to start off by giving it a name for the account. I'll call it Chess Goes. Then we have the container setup. So similar to Google Analytics, we have different layers here. So we can have an account called Chess Goes, and we could have a container for their website, a container for their app, a container for their menu, for all different websites. We just have one website, so we're just going to call it chessgoes.com. We want to do web. You can see here it can also be used for iOS and AMP and fancy stuff. We're just doing web. Create. Send your life away. All right, install Google Tag Manager. What do we do now? So Google says, paste this code as high in the head as possible. Additionally, paste this code in the body. All right. I'm going to, so if you're using Google Tag Manager, I suggest that you remove the Google Analytics code and instead install it through Tag Manager. So a little bit of a step backwards right now, but it's going to make sense. So here, I'm going to copy this code. We're going to go over to Divi, integration, and I'm going to delete this Google Analytics code and paste it right here. I'm going to come back to the body, copy, come over here to our body and paste. Save changes, green check mark, we're good. Now we can click OK. We're ready to play around. So Google Tag Manager has two main, let's call them items. One type of item is a tag, and the other item is called a trigger. So a tag is a block of code, and a trigger is a rule that says when does it show up. So for every tag, it needs a trigger. We're going to start off by installing Google Analytics through Google Tag Manager. So we come over here and click New Tag. We're going to give it a name. I'm going to call this GA, Google Analytics. See, they make us create a tag and a trigger now. So I'm going to click Tag. Over here on the right, there's all different kinds of tags. Google has pre-built integrations with all different kinds of platforms. Google Ads, Crazy Egg, Hotjar, Pinterest, Quora, Facebook Pixel, you name it, there's a template here for it. We're going to start over here with Google Analytics, Universal Analytics. That's the top one. I'm going to click on that. Okay, what do we want to track in Google Analytics? We want to track page views. That's just the default. Now, the first time you set this up, you need to create what's called a settings variable. So a settings variable says, what Google Analytics account are we sending this data to? It sounds a little complex. It's really easy. We just need to stick in our tracking ID. So we're going to come over here to Analytics, go back to any of these windows. I'm going to click Property Settings. And it gives us an easy way to copy and paste our ID. Note that the ID is found when you're an admin. It's in the middle panel. It's not in the view. It's not in the account. It's in the middle panel, which is Property. So I'm going to copy this tracking ID. Come over here and hit Paste. And then I'm just going to give this a name. I'm going to call this GA Settings. Hit Save. So the reason we're doing that is you could install 3 different kinds of Google Analytics if you want. Don't recommend it, but settings are tied to an account, so that's how that works. Next, we get to trigger. Trigger says, okay, this is a block of code. When does it show up? Super basic. The default trigger is all pages. We want the Google Analytics to show up on all pages. Wonderful. All right, we do that. We click Save. So we've now just switched Google Analytics from installing via code to Tag Manager. So Tag Manager is kind of like a box that contains different pieces of code. And we just moved Google Analytics into that box. So while we did that, nothing actually changed yet. So the first thing we need to do is publish it. Top right, we're going to do Submit. This has a whole versioning system based or built in. You can use that if you're working with bigger teams, bigger sites. If it's just you, you can put whatever you want here. I'll put installed GA. Publish. Great, it's done. It saved a record of that version happening. We can go back over to our pizza website. We can open up our tag manager here, give this a refresh, and it's going to say, whoa, you're installing, or you're showing Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager. It sees both of those on there now. So that's all that took. So does anybody have questions about that kind of basic integration before we move on to tracking things we care about? So I see Eugene asked, how do you exclude pages, posts, etc. from GS? I'm assuming that's Google Analytics. So you can come over here to Tag Manager, and we'll go back to our triggers. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to click on our trigger, add exception. In the top right, we can click plus, and we can do exclude page. And then we can click page view, some page views. Page URL contains /test. And click save. And now this will not show up on the page /test. I don't know why you would want to do that with Google Analytics, but that's how you would do it. And then I saw James had a hand up.
Yeah, Shane, on the tag manager, the universal, so you have the universal one, which is 3. Do you have to add it also for 4, or will 3 and 4 cover both?
I believe you need to add 4 separately. I have actually not dabbled with 4 myself.
Okay.
I'm quite happy with 3.
Well, so am I, but I've been testing 4 out, so I just wasn't sure if we had to create a separate tag for that one too. So, okay.
Yeah, if you find out, let me know.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure, like, if you do, let me go back.
Yeah, it has an option for 4, so.
Forward, where are we?
I just didn't know if the universal covered both of them.
Yeah, so here they have 4. Yeah, I'm not sure if it also fires 3 as well. That's just an animal I don't really want to get into at the moment.
Sorry, what was the question? I didn't understand. 3 or 4. I'm like, what was James asking?
So Google Analytics has a new version out called GA4. And if you create a tag in GA4, or sorry, create an account in GA4, it actually creates an account in 3 as well. So when you create 3, it creates 3 plus 4, and it kind of keeps them separate. So James was asking, if you install GA through this method, will it install both of those, or do you need to create each one separately?
Oh, okay. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions? Heather?
I'm sorry, I'm being dense about this. Explain to me again why we want to do this tag manager and not just leave our analytics in the body. I'm sure that you probably already explained it. I just didn't understand.
No, all good. So we are going to be tracking a whole bunch of cool things. We're going to be tracking phone call submits every time someone calls, places a phone call. We're going to track every time someone views your menu. And we're going to track every time someone fills out a contact form, every time someone clicks to go to an external website. We're going to track all this stuff, and that has to happen in Tag Manager.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to set it up anyway. Plus, it's just generally a good practice to set up because you can keep everything in one place, all your code in one place. If any external party needs to add code, you don't need to give them access to Divi or the website. Plus, it has versioning built in. You can roll it back if something breaks. It's a good platform for doing all this. That's what it's designed to do.
Cool. Thanks.
All right. So we are now at this point. We've installed Google Tag Manager and theme options, and we just moved Google Analytics to Google Tag Manager. So far, pretty boring stuff. We haven't done anything fun. So let's change that. We're going to come back over here to our website. And the first thing that I'm going to set up tracking for is phone calls. Right? That's pretty basic. Just about every website, retail website, takes phone calls. So we're going to track that in Google Tag Manager by clicking New Tag. Here I'm going to call it a phone call. And we want this information to go into Google Analytics. So I'm going to start off by clicking Google Analytics. Now, what do we want to track? Like, how do we want to send this information to analytics? Not in the form of a page view. We want to do it in the form of an event. An event is your go-to, item for tracking just about anything we care about. So where does that actually live? Google Analytics will put events under behavior, events. I'll just click top events for now. And let's see if there are any going in. So it looks like I had one set up for something. I don't really know what it was. But I had something set up here. So those will come in to this events section. This event section is not super useful to us. So right after this, I'm going to show everybody how to turn events into goals, because goals in Google Analytics is where we can actually see the stuff we care about in the same views we care about. But this is the place we need to get it first. So let's jump back over to Tag Manager. We clicked New Tag. We gave it a name called Phone Call. We clicked Google Analytics, and we clicked Event. And now we get 4 boxes. So there's kind of a hierarchy to this. So category is like, what type of event is it? So for this, I'm going to do Phone Call. Action. I'm going to do call. Label. So I recommend filling out these 2 fields. These 2 fields you don't really need to fill out. Label, you can, you could type something in here, or you can use dynamic data, such as, give me the page URL. For every phone call, tell me what page they were on when they clicked it. So I'll leave that for now. And then value. So value, you can do that or you cannot do that. Optional. So value is usually a monetary value. So let's say a phone call is worth $10 to you. You can type in 10. Right now, unless this conversion we're setting up actually equals $10, I would leave that blank. So that's what we have to type in. Phone call, action, label. Last thing here we have to do is change settings variable to our settings, because that tells Tag Manager which analytics account to send it into. All right, so we set up our tag. Now we have to set up our trigger. How do we know that they're actually making a phone call? So I'm going to come over here to the website, view on mobile. So if I click on this, I'm clicking this right now, nothing's happening. Why is that? Because this is the old Divi header. So the old Divi header doesn't actually wrap the phone number in a clickable link. I think I'm using like some kind of plugin that creates a floating call button on here, and that does. So if I inspect this, it's a little hard to see, but on the left-hand side, it says ahref equals tell, and then a phone number. So that is a link that is actually clickable, and when you click that, it dials a phone. So how do you do that? The link starts with tel:. That is a click-to-call link anywhere on the web. So whenever you're adding phone numbers to your website, make them clickable and add that link, tel:phone number, to it. So if that's done already, we can go back to Tag Manager and we can say, how do we trigger this phone call tag? So I'm going to click here. It says choose a trigger. I'm going to click the plus in the top right to bring up, custom triggers. So boom, now we have a custom trigger. Let's call this tel click. So we just gave it a name. It kind of feels like we're in Inception here because there's so many windows going on. But we essentially just created a custom trigger. We gave it a name. And now we're going to actually set up that trigger. So I'm going to click on that. These are our trigger types. A whole bunch of defaults built in. Over here, we want to go over to click. This is what we care about. We want to do just links. We want to do just links, not all links, some links. Okay, what's the logic here? We change this to choose built-in variable. And we get a whole line of crazy stuff. The one that we're looking for is click URL. That's the magic one. Click URL. Then we have our rule, contains equals, doesn't contain, contains, TEL, colon. So this is now going to fire on anytime somebody clicks a link that contains tel. If you have a website that has multiple phone numbers, let's say phone numbers to another company or whatever, and you don't want to track those, you can do tel : 973. That's the area code. You can kind of do whatever you want here. For this website, I'm just going to do tel. I'm going to save that. I'm going to save that. And now it's done, but it's not live yet because we haven't clicked submit. So if we just want to publish this, if we're like confident, like I did it right, you can just hit submit. Instead, what I recommend is previewing and testing. So Google Tag Manager has a pretty cool system built in for testing. I'm going to start that by clicking preview. It opens a new tab and says, okay, give me the URL you want to test. So we'll test the homepage. We're going to start testing. Forms this kind of cool connection here. In the bottom right, we get a debugger connected. Great. We're going to go to inspect so that I can actually see that phone number down here. I'm going to move this out of the way. And now I'm ready to test it by clicking that phone call. But before I do that, I'm going to jump back to our other window and see what's happening. So this shows you kind of like the data layer of like what's happening behind the scenes. Right here is the session on the left. We're on the home page. And here it has two windows, tags fired, tags not fired. So tags fired so far, GA. GA is what I named it. So we know the Google Analytics is installed, it fired, it's working. Cool. These are other tags that are living within our tag manager that have not fired. So here we see our phone call tag has not fired. I'm going to come back over to our website and click on this button. Not ready to order a pizza yet, but I clicked it. And we come back here, and here it shows tags fired, phone call. So that tag moved from not fired to fired, showing that it worked. Right, so that gives us a validation that we did it right. So what I'm going to do now is close out of these two windows, come back over to Google Tag Manager, and click Submit. Give it another name that has a whole versioning built in. So we're going to do added call tracking. Publish. Wonderful. All right, so now what that does is it adds the event. Anytime someone's going to call, it's now going to show up here under events, top events. It's a good first step, but it's not where we want to see the information. This screen just is not useful to us. So the screen in Google Analytics I like to go to is acquisition, all traffic, channels. And this will kind of show you every channel that someone used to get to your website: organic, direct, referral, social media, advertising. And this gives you a nice table view. It breaks it out by channel. So let me change my date range to like a month so we get a little bit more data. And what I like about this view is it also shows our goals right here. Goal conversion rate is 0%. Why is that? Because we don't have any goals created. So what we're going to do now is create a goal based off of that event. All right. Admin. On the right, I'm going to go over here to goals. We don't have any goals. That's how Google Analytics comes, no goals. We're going to click new goal. So goal is something that we care about. They have some templates in here like contact us, you know, a whole bunch of different things. They're kind of spotty how well they work. So I click custom. I'm going to give it a name. We'll call it phone call as well. All right, and how are we measuring this goal? Destination is the basic one. You know, that's like track every time someone hits a thank you page. Track every time someone lands on your contact page. Duration, you know, consider it a conversion every time someone spends 2 minutes on the website. Consider it a conversion anytime someone visits 3 pages. Those are kind of the defaults built into Google Analytics. And they're better than nothing, but they're really not what we care about, because someone could have spent 2 minutes on the website. That doesn't mean they're actually a customer. Doesn't mean they actually converted. So we're going to come down here to events and click continue. And now we see the same 4 boxes that we filled out in Tag Manager. So this is just kind of a filter. We need to make sure that this matches case sensitive, whatever we typed in before. So we typed in phone call, and then action, I think was call. I'm going to come back here and double check. I'm going to click tags. Nope, not that one. Phone call. Phone call, call, capital C. So phone call, call, perfect. Then we have label and value. Now this is like a filter. So we want to leave these blank, because if we put something in here, it's only going to count it if it contains that. We're going to leave that blank, and what that will do is right here, we're sending the page URL that they called us on. So by leaving it blank, it will just intercept whatever that value is. So phone call and call are our filters. So we put those in here. And then we click save. That's done. Now let's go back to our acquisition, all traffic, channels. And we're not going to see anything has changed here. And that's because Google Analytics will only start counting that from this moment in time moving forward. So if people call them, we can come back tomorrow and look at this. And right here, it will show you how many people called. And you can splice that right over here by channel source, which as marketers is what we really want to get down to. We want to see how many people called them as a result of SEO. How many called them as a result of social, or referral, or whatever. So to get that level of detail, we had went to Tag Manager. We set up a custom tag as an event, and then we turned it into a goal. So that's the process you need if you really want to see the data at this level. All right, so we just did that with a phone call, which is super basic. Let's think about what else we might want to do on this website. So let's say, you know, a lot of people are winding up on our homepage, and we want to know, are people clicking on this button? You know, I put it in here. I think people are clicking on it, but I really don't know. So we can't really figure that out in Divi. You know, you could figure that out with other third-party tools, but Tag Manager lets us do that free, easy, cheap, you know. So let's figure out how many people are clicking on our specials. Coming back to Tag Manager, I'm going to go to Overview, New Tag. Let's call this specials button. Our tag will be Google Analytics. This will be an event. Our category will be, I'll call it specials. Our action will be click. We want a label. So if we have, let's say we have a specials button on 10 different pages, then maybe we might put page URL in there. You know, we could do all different kinds of stuff like that. I'm just going to keep this simple and leave it blank. We set our GA settings, and now we get down to our trigger. So this is our kind of library of used triggers. We're going to do a new trigger. We'll call this specials button click. We want to do a click. And here we could do all elements or links. You can kind of do either one. So all elements, let's say you have the word specials somewhere that's not a link. Let's say we have it here, right? And someone clicks on this, even though it's just text, that will fire the tag. Right, so that's what that's the difference between all elements and just links. All elements will fire on anything. So if we really want to track this button, I'm going to do just links. What links? Some links. We're not going to do click URL, because if we did click URL for specials, that takes you to /specials. Well, someone could navigate to /specials from the navigation too, so that'll screw up our tracking. We just want to track this. So I happen to know that this is the only button on the website that contains our specials. So what I can do is change click URL, choose built-in variable, click text. So links where the click text contains our specials. Save. Save. Let's test. All right, so our tag assistant is connected. It sees Google Analytics fired, but the specials button and the phone call have not fired. Let's go back over to this window, and I don't need to be in mobile, so I'm just going to click on our specials. Specials button moved from not fired to fired. Boom. So now we can track how many people click that specials button to figure out if that's a good call to action, if people are using that UI element. You know, all different kinds of things you can track with that. So the second step to make this data useful is we jump back into analytics. We go to admin. We go to goals. We create a new goal. Custom event specials button. Category equals, don't actually remember what I called it. Specials click. Specials click. Save, and we're done. And now we have two goals: phone calls, special buttons. One thing to keep in mind, Google Analytics limits the amount of goals you can create. I think it's 20. I think it's 20. But so use them wisely. You know, if you want to stop using one, you can change it and repurpose it. So let's do one more example. Order online. All right, so order online, they're using a third-party menu platform, which many restaurants do. I want to know how many out of how many people go to the website, how many actually go to order online. Those two numbers divided by each other will give you, a loose conversion rate. I can go to the client and say 1 in 5 people that visit your website look at your online ordering. You can also track that over time in Google Analytics. You might be able to find out that 80% of people that visit through Google end up tracking you online, but only 10% through social media. Maybe you need to evaluate your social media strategy. So those are types of insights that can be gained through this kind of tracking. So let's look at how to track that. So this is a third-party URL. I'm going to go ahead and copy that link. We'll come back to our tag manager and go to new tag. We'll call it order online. Analytics. Event. Category equals order. Action equals click. Come down to our trigger. We want to do online order click. We're going to do just links, some links, where the click URL contains that. Just to be safe, I'm going to take out this stuff in case I have some poorly coded links. We'll save that. We'll jump over to our preview tool. So here we can see our 3 tags that are in the deck. I'm going to come over here and click on Order Online. I'm going to try one more time. Okay, so that worked. Sometimes it can be buggy, the preview tool, but that is working. All right. So final step, we come over to Tag Manager. We publish this. I'll say added order tracking. Publish. We come over to Analytics. We go to Goals. New goal. Custom order online. Event. Come on. Order click. All right. Click Save, done. And now we have 3 different custom events that we're tracking for this website. I'm going to close out of here. All right, close. Whenever you use the Google preview tool, you need to click stop. You need to click stop debugging in order to get that thing down here to go away. So we're done with that. So in summary, we took this website that had just basics analytics tracking before, and we now added custom tracking for 3 things that we care about. So we're now going to have data for how many people call them. We can then slice that data based on a referral source, based on page that they're on when they call, based on a number of factors, city, just about anything Google Analytics gives us. We can figure out how many people are getting to the specials page to see how popular it is. Maybe we need a pop-up, probably not, but maybe we need something else to send them to the specials page. And then we can figure out how many people are going to the order online page. So a lot of times when you have a website with a third-party platform that manages the conversions, whether that be a store, an online ordering thing, a scheduling app, you know, as soon as you put the conversion action in a third-party system, you immediately lose control of knowing how many people are actually converting. So this connects those bridges to give you the data. So you can say, you know, well, 100 people ended up on your online ordering menu. You know that only 50 people placed an order, you know, so it can really help connect the dots to give you the data you need to make better marketing decisions. So jumping back over to our outline here, we have now gone over all of these items. So basic analytics tracking and conversion tracking. All of the data now lives in Google Analytics. It's a nice place to have it all. But in order to actually look at that insight, we need to drill through all of these horrible menus. So the next step is going to be moving this into a reporting dashboard that we actually care about, is useful, and automating that. So I'm going to take a quick breather here. Does anybody have any questions? James, I'm not sure if your hand was up from before or if you have a question.
Sorry, I forgot to drop it down.
No worries. Everyone's good on this?
Great info, Shane. Really learning a lot. Thanks so much.
Totally. All right. So next up, we're going to move to reporting. So reporting can be done in Google Analytics. You can set up reports, and you can even schedule them to send out automatically and do all that stuff. I'm not a big fan. I like to use a data visualization tool called Google Data Studio. So I'm going to jump over to this. All right, so in Data Studio, we're going to start by clicking Blank Report. They have different templates you can use. Templates can be a good place to start, but we're going to start with a blank report because it's actually really easy to use. So a report is created usually for each website, but you could create a report for multiple websites that combines all different kinds of data together. Lots of things you can do with this tool. We're just going to use this to pull in data from Google Analytics and Google Search Console to have one view to see all the things we care about. Very good for client-facing reports, but also very good for actually analyzing the data yourself. So I clicked New Report. We have a blank report. It says Add Data. All right, we're going to feed it data. These are different data sources. We're going to start off by clicking Analytics. Okay, so click your analytics account. Here we are, Chesco's. Here's the property. Here's the view. Add. Okay, our data is now added. We're going to add one more data source as well. So up here on the top, I'm going to click on Add Data. We're going to see that same menu. So I like to add the data first, then you don't ever really have to worry about it. All right, we need Google Search Console, which they hide down here. And we're going to search for Chesco's. And I'm going to click on, let's see, which one is it? I'm going to click on the domain one. And then it's going to give us two options. And that's because of how the how the data is stored in Google. Google actually stores two different databases for your search data. One with data based on each individual URL, and one based on your site overall. I like to add both, but it's kind of up to you. So I'm going to click on site, then we just want to look at web. This site, we're not trying to get data based on our Google image results or video, or we just want web. So we do that, we click add. So now our data is added. We have both data sources in here. And here we see a blank canvas. So it had added this little chart before. I'm just going to delete it. Okay. So up on the top is our menu. And the first thing you're going to want to do is click Add Chart, because this is a visualization tool. Charts are where all the different pretty things live. All different ways to visualize our data. Let's start off with time series. This is a line chart, the most basic chart you should have. So it says click, add, drag to draw. I'm just going to, let's put this down here. All right, so we see something happened. We see new users, we see a chart. It kind of shows what look like random dates. Not very useful. So the next thing I'm going to do is click Add Control. I'm going to do Date Range Control and put this up here. All right, so now we're going to configure this. So select the date range. This is going to be a drag and drop interactive element that you can change the date, and then all of the data will change based on the date. So that will allow us to have our charts all set up. And if we want to look at last month, we could just click last month and everything will update. So I'm going to click on here. And now where we actually configure stuff happens on the right-hand side of the screen. So data, default date range. I'm going to change this from auto to, so I'm going to scroll up, last month. If you have it at this month, your data is going to be all over the place depending on if it's the 1st of the month or the 31st. So I like to look at last month. So what's that going to do? Anytime we visit this URL, it's automatically going to update to the last month. Very useful. So now we're going to come over here to this chart. So we click on this chart, and on the right-hand side, we see a whole bunch of settings. The first thing we want to do is click our data source. Do we want this chart to apply to Google Analytics or to Google Search Console? We're going to do Google Analytics. Let's just look at the whole website. All right. Lots of settings here. A lot of them you can ignore, but the one that's important is date range. Do we want this date range to automatically adapt to this, or do we want it to be, fixed, let's say, or use some other logic. So what I'm going to do is actually unlink this date range from this, because a lot of the things we're going to add to this report are going to be for last month, but it's also nice to see a high-level overview. How's the website been doing over the last year? So I'm going to come over here to default date range and change this to custom. Instead of last month, now I'm going to get a little fancy here, but this is what I do personally. So I'm going to move down here to advanced. And now I'm going to do, when's the start date? It's going to be today minus 13 months. The end date is going to be today minus 1 month. So what does that do? It gives us a 13-month comparison. So we can see year over year. We can see if this is a seasonal website, how was March of 2020 versus March of 2021? Considering a year ago was, the COVID epicenter, it's going to be pretty crazy, as we can see here. But that helps you to see seasonality. Now we see a crazy chart. We can't really understand this. So let's start by making it bigger. It adopts. Great. Well, we still see, lots of spikes. This is a restaurant, so I'm assuming that's probably weekends. But this isn't really useful for seeing, did the website grow each month? I really can't tell. This is kind of useless. So I'm going to come over here to dimension, which is date. And sorry, I'm not going to click the date. I'm going to click on this date, I think. Where is it? So drill down. Okay. Year, month. That's what we want. So I clicked on drill down, year, month. And that now adds up each daily number and puts it into a month, which makes it actually useful for us. So here we can see quite a seasonality. March of 2020 died because the restaurant was closed. And we could see that going back up. And now we can see, a real seasonality curve. Very useful. All right, on the right-hand side, we see a massive menu. And this is every piece of data that you can actually see in Google Analytics, but in a list view. So right now, we're looking at new users. I'm going to look for sessions, because I don't necessarily want to just look at new users. I want to look at everybody. So I'm going to find sessions and drag that over here. Look at that. It shows us both new users and sessions now in the same graph, so we can kind of compare. That can be useful. For now, I'm just going to kill new users because I don't care. We just want to see, in general, how popular was a website over the last year. That's great. Now let's try to add, so now we have a bird's eye view. What happened to the website over the last year? Well, now I want to see what happened last month. So I'm going to jump in and do add chart. So for websites that don't get a lot of visits, line charts are not going to be that useful for a month, because it's not going to be that great. So instead, I'm going to do scorecard. Scorecard is a nice number, super easy. All right, by default, it is showing us sessions. Wonderful. Now I'm going to do copy and paste. You can do Control-C, Control-V in this tool. Let's say we want to see sessions and we want to see new users. I'm going to drag this over to here. And maybe we want to see page views. Page, oh, almost. Page views. I'm going to change new users to actually just users. Okay, so now what do we have here? Kind of confusing because it's in the wrong order. Let's move this around. Okay. So last month, we had 3,200 users on the website. What is a user? It's an individual device. So if I visit this website once on a computer, I'm one user. If I visit also on my phone, I'm a second user. Sessions is every period that you visit the website. And then page views is every page you viewed. So some quick mental math. You can see that the average user visited almost 2 times. This divided by this. You can see that the average user probably looked at 4 pages. But this divided by this is 2. So the average time a person visits, they look at 2 pages. A little bit of quick mental math, and you can get a good idea of how users are interacting with your website. So that's nice, but now let's look at some trends. So I'm going to click on this. On the right side, come down here to comparison, and this is where it gets cool. So I'm going to change comparison to previous period. Apply. Boom, we're up 12% from the previous period. What's the previous period? Previous month. February of this year versus March of this year, 12% more users. Cool. Let's do that same thing for these. Change that to previous period. Apply. So in Data Studio, you have 2 views. You have editing view and view view. I'm in editing mode. Top right, I'm going to toggle to view. And now I can interact with this instead of editing. I can move my mouse over here and see data. I can also change this. Well, let's look at how do they do in January. This is going to refresh. Well, January is down from December. It's a restaurant. Holidays are busy. That makes sense. Right? This did not change because we have that fixed. We have that date range fixed. Always show us 13-month period over period, high-level view. All right, so that gives us some basic data. I'm just going to throw in a few more things. Let's do add chart. Let's do a pie chart. Pie charts are useful for certain things like comparison. So I want to know how many people are looking at this website on a phone versus a laptop or desktop. That kind of data is useful to me in a pie chart as opposed to just numbers. So over here, I'm going to look at, type in mobile. Maybe that's not the right thing. Device category. You'll have to play around with these. Google has a whole bunch that are similar. This is what we want. So device category. And we want to look at not necessarily page views. Let's look at sessions. Sessions is kind of my go-to thing there. All right, so here we can see that 1 in every 4 people view it on a phone. Well, that's very telling. Expected for a restaurant, but very telling when it's visualized in this manner. If you wanted to, you could throw mobile views into something like this, and you could see, is your mobile increasing over time or decreasing? So, we got a nice basic view set up. Now let's look at channel attribution. That is my favorite report as a marketer. So channel attribution says, how are people interacting depending on how they got to your website? My favorite way to view that is in a chart. Or sorry, a table chart. So I'm going to do plus table. Okay. And now on the right-hand side, we want to search for default channel grouping and move that to date. So now we have organic, direct, social, referral, and then we have users. All right, I don't like users. I'm going to change users to sessions. So now we could see, I'm just going to move this out of the way. Okay, so now we can see how many sessions happened that month from each source. Well, just because a session happened doesn't mean they actually converted, right? So now this is where we pull in all of that cool data that we just set up. So I'm going to type in phone call. Oh, look at that, our goal. So we want completions. So there's a whole bunch in here. We want to look for completions. Here we go. So now in this table, we're going to be able to see how many people called this business from each one of these sources. It's all going to be 0 now because we set that up today. But then we can also do specials. Specials button completions. And we can do, what was our last one? Order. Order online completions. Okay, useful. What else can be useful in the table view? Bounce rate, something we all like. I'm going to put bounce rate down here. I'm also going to put on average session duration. Okay, so this looks a little crazy. So let's clean it up. So all of these labels are going to be equal to whatever the field is. Usually it's not pretty. So default channel grouping, I'm going to click the pencil here and give it a different name. Of course. Sessions make sense. Bounce rate makes sense. Average session duration. Give it abbreviations. Phone call 1 is going to be call. Let's go back. A little slow today. This will be specials. And then this will be order. All right, and now let's try to make it pretty. So we haven't looked at this yet. Our style tab, you can have a lot of fun with this. So I'm going to start off by clicking, we don't care about these numbers on the left, so I'm going to turn off row numbers. Next, I'm going to turn on, I'm going to go down and find bounce rate. So these do it by numbers. So we want column 2 for bounce rate. Decimal precision, we don't need 2 decimal points for bounce rate. That's ridiculous. So I'm going to change that to 0. Average session duration. We don't need hours for this website. So we're going to change that to compact numbers. Nice and clean. All right. Now I'm going to add some conditional formatting. So this can get a little crazy, but we're just going to do color scale for bounce rate based on red to white and save that. Higher bounce rate is bad. Well, the data now reflects that. Let's go down to rules, and I'll do one more for session duration. Do color scale. And let's jump back to view this data. So now we have some useful data. We can quickly look at this website and see what's going on this month. Or we could change this to last month and see how that changed. One more thing I like to do, so when you have data in tables, you can click on the table. You can jump down to comparison. And I'm going to do previous period. For websites that are seasonal, think of a ski resort, you'll want to do previous year to compare seasonality. We're doing previous period. Turn that on, and now we're going to get a whole bunch of cool stuff here. So we're going to see the delta for every one of these metrics versus the previous month, all in one compact view. This is like very difficult / impossible with analytics. Well, maybe we don't need this for all of the stuff. So we can jump back into style. I can jump down to bounce rate. We don't need to see how that changed every month. So turn off show compare. Same with that. We can turn that off. But now we could see how many more people called them last month versus the previous month. So this is going to help you, give you the data you need to correlate the changes you're making in Divi to actual performance metrics that you or your clients care about. We're at time right now, so I'll start to wrap it up. So Data Studio, we had connected analytics. Basically the same thing I just did, you can do for Google Search Console and see, keywords people are typing in, all different kinds of stuff like that. This has a filtering system built in, so you can add filters to any of these charts based on any metric that you saw there. You could filter out people on a certain page, just about anything with filters down here. These reports, by default, are only accessible to you. You can hit share and then manage access through email, or change anybody with the link can view, and then easily send that to your client so they can view and play around with it, but not break anything. Anytime you're in view mode and you change this view here, that only changes it for you. As soon as you hit refresh, it'll go away. The other cool thing, you can come up here and do schedule email delivery, and that can get sent every single month on the day of your choosing at the time of your choosing with a custom email subject and message. Boom. Very useful for client reporting, a very nice add-on for if you're doing any kind of maintenance hosting or anything like that for clients. Building in this kind of reporting has helped me a lot when it comes to making the data more accessible to clients and also making them more invested in the work you're doing. If you're doing any kind of manual reporting, this makes your life so much easier. So in summary, we have gone from basic analytic tracking, which is useful for simple stuff, conversion tracking, setting up custom things you want to track, and then reporting, taking that data, putting it into a useful, digestible, insightful format, and then automating the work. So all you have to do is open your email every month and analyze it. So that's a wrap. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here, and then we'll jump into any questions we have.